Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Don't Praise the Machine, the internet's #1 comedy podcast about the ways that the internet is shaping culture and so much more. John Maloney, you've been opening TikTok and seeing internet change culture and so much more, a real lot in your life as a new dad. You've been looking at pickup artist videos.
Yeah, I don't think this is really a time in my life where I need that. In fact, it probably is the worst possible time to be looking at it. And yet the algorithm knows best, and the algorithm has been serving me pickup artist videos, specifically the masterful work of everyone's favorite Eric von Markovik, or perhaps it's von Markovich, I think Markovik, aka Mystery, who people of our vintage will probably know better than most, because, I mean, Eric's no spring chicken.
Of our generation will know.
Yeah, men of our generation. Because there was a well-known book by Neil Strauss called The Game, and that book profiled at some length Mystery, Eric von Markovich.
2005.
Who was born Eric James Horvat Markovich. And then that sort of catapulted him. He was then, I think, probably in he's born in 1971. He was already kind of reasonably long in the tooth when he got kind of shot to fame. Presumably had been doing this for some time, running these kind of classes and writing, blogs and things dealing with the methods for seducing women and getting to certain stages with women and chatting them up. And, if you're an average looking dude, here are the things you can do to kind of crack the code of seduction, basically.
Yeah.
And so Neil Strauss kind of, in The Game, as I understand it, I've never read it, but he sort of insinuated himself into the world of these pickup artists, and somebody he got to know was Mystery. And then he was on a reality TV show, which was just about him. It was called The Pickup Artist.
Yeah.
And it was on VH1, I think around 2007, 2008. Yeah. There was 2 seasons, 16 episodes of that. And he was, there were probably other people involved, but he was kind of the main dude. And I guess it was him demonstrating his techniques with a bunch of kind of slightly lost young men who needed help with seduction. And what's interesting about, so I was kind of dimly aware of that. I hadn't thought about it for a very long time, because that was all very sort of 2000s culture when that sort of movement
2000s
peaked.
culture.
Yeah. And then the manosphere and pickup artists and everything, it's not like it went away. It just kind of evolved into quite a different thing. Or sort of, just developed as a subculture. But what's interesting about Mystery is he's still just kind of chipping away in exactly the same way that he always has. He's still got this really, he's in his 50s now. He's 53.
Right.
So he's not really in a position to be picking up, beautiful young women anymore, I would have thought. But I guess he's a master, so he can probably do whatever he wants. And he's got this very kind of early 2000s look to him. He's got a little kind of, goatee, and he's got he kind of looks like somebody who might be doing close-up magic at a casino or something. Like I think he actually does do magic.
That was his in. He had magic tricks.
He had sleight of hand and, mind control and all those things. And he's got this kind of he's often sporting a broad-brimmed fancy hat and a chain.
Yeah.
And it's like quite a dated look, and also the look of a younger man rather than a 53-year-old man, you might think. But he's still just talking about all the same things. Does these kind of, he's kind of pivoted to the, I don't know how real it is, but it looks a bit like the kind of fake podcast format where he's talking to someone off camera, but it's quite unpolished. And what I love about it is that he's just kind of so enmeshed in this world of jargon.
Yeah.
So much so that it took me a couple of videos to realize what he was even talking about. Because he doesn't say,
he uses acronyms.
He doesn't start the videos by saying, here's how to get a girlfriend. He says, I think he uses this kind of semi-military terminology. So he says, you can actually nuzzle in field, he'll say. And I don't, and that means, and he uses the term in field to describe kind of real world situations where you would pick up.
I'm ashamed to admit.
And he's going,
I'm ashamed to admit that I know what that means, John, without having it been explained to me. such was I in the late 2000s. Yes, go on.
Yeah, so if to the extent that but he talks about like the first video I watched, which remains one of my favorites. He's talking about how his current girlfriend who lives in Belgrade, which sounds like a kind of kid at school who's trying to pretend he has a girlfriend when he actually doesn't. You don't know her. She lives in Belgrade. But we met at this club. He says, I was at this club and we were we were in field and I was kind of running some lines on this woman. And then this two set who I passed this two set on entry and the two set came up to me and I made my selection, which just is a term for like two women.
Yeah. And I made my selection and then I went into demonstrating higher value, DHV. That's one of the real ones.
Demonstrating. Yeah. So tell me about, because you've probably got a better sense of some of that lingo.
Yeah.
Because you had a brief brush with it in your youth, as I understand. Yeah. There's a lot of people of our generation.
I was even reading that, I was doing a little bit of prep for this episode, and I even read that fellow podcaster and superstar Stephen Bartlett, who hosts Diary of a CEO and is on Dragon's Den in the UK. This is according to Grok, so I hope it wasn't hallucinating. But I asked Grok about people who were famous in the pickup artist industry or had some interaction with it in that era, the kind of the game era. Game comes out 2005, and that's when a lot of people hear about this world for the first time. And apparently Stephen Bartlett talked about dabbling in it as a young man and then going into business shortly after. I first so Mystery was in this whole scene, which was called Pickup Artistry, which I had never heard of until I remember exactly where I was. I was at our dear mutual friend Claire O'Shea's house, probably in around 2000. It might have been 2005, actually. It might have been when the book came out. And maybe as the book's press tour, somebody in Cosmopolitan magazine had written an article on The Game by Neil Strauss. And as you alluded to, this book was a kind of expose, a narrative expose about this pickup artist community, which is this community of young men who'd found one another on the internet. And it was led by men who at least claimed that they could help. If you were struggling to meet women, they knew the tricks and you could essentially pay them to learn them. This could be in the most basic form, it could be like an online PDF that you pay money for. But then what was very popular at the time and still is to this day is boot camps. And they would be the most effective. And the idea was that these men who said, look, I know how to get a girl. You don't know how to get a girlfriend. You don't know that there's a social... there's like a set of skills that you can learn, a set of strategies that you can learn. It's a lot easier than you actually think. You just haven't been shown the machinery behind how it works, which is very appealing to anybody who's very lost with women, which is a lot of men, myself included, in the 2000s.
The world of, look, I would have loved just a step-by-step guide that, I could treat I was never very good with
women,
machines, with all women, but to the extent that a man who is lacking in confidence can just be told, don't worry about feeling unconfident. Don't worry about the murky world of emotions and vibes, and just here are the things. You do this, then you do this.
That's right.
Just like fixing a car.
Yeah, it's a very it's a very masculine approach. It's like a very engineering, if this then that approach to social interaction.
I was talking about raising this on the pod, and I described it as like memorizing a fatality in Mortal Kombat. It's like you go up to a woman and you're like, okay, double forward, back, down.
It's exactly that is an excellent analogy. It is exactly like that. The mystery method, as it is called, and a lot of the pickup artistry stuff that was suggested around that time was very much like learning fatalities in Mortal Kombat. So you had to go, okay, I'm going to approach this 2-set and I'm going to demonstrate higher value. And then she's going to shit test me.
The HV.
Which is that she is going to, she wants to test if I'm a real man or not. So she's going to say something like, why don't you go to the, oh yeah, you're so hot. Go to the bar and buy me a drink, dude. And then if you do that, it's basically you're jumping through a hoop for her, and that makes you lower. You got lower status.
Cuck.
So if she said, cuck.
Yeah.
So if she says, go and get me a drink, dude, then you go, ha. I don't think I'm going to get you a drink. I think you should get me one. Because you do the flipperoo. You go, ha. Why? In fact, you can get me a drink because you actually think I'm handsome. So this is like a reframe. There's a million different pieces of jargon. And then, of course, the classic one, John, which is the one piece of jargon that mystery has given us as a culture that everybody knows. If the girl, if you want to demonstrate higher value, what is a thing that typically men do not do if they are interested in women? Is they wouldn't subtly insult them. You wouldn't say, oh, that's a really nice dress you got on there. Where did you get it from? The charity shop? It's something like that, right? Or that's a really, that hair, that you might say something like, it looks like your hairdresser made a few mistakes this week, but it's okay. It doesn't look that terrible. I mean, look, to be honest, I think you're quite brave for coming out tonight with hair like that. Something like that. So
it's a kind of, it's a compliment, and it's a backhanded compliment,
like a backhanded compliment, and it's meant to take her a couple of rungs down on the totem pole, and this is called a neg. And the verb is negging. And I think a lot of men out there, and even women, will be familiar with this term because it exists now in the wild world of the English language for any if you kind of tease, it's sort of expanded now to mean that, you know, if you kind of tease but it's sort of saying something,
just kind of jokingly berating someone,
but it cannot, I think it often would kind of go too far. And I know a lot of females who read the game or have found out about negging were very upset about it because they were like, well, this is just deliberately saying mean things to women.
It's just making me feel vulnerable and lacking confidence myself.
Yeah. So what did you?
I mean, to me, it's just an iteration of. I grew up with treat 'em mean, keep 'em keen.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's exactly
same thing. I don't like that. That's the world we live in, Al. But you know, that if it works, it works.
So that's what the game.
No, look,
sorry, go on.
So do you think it's? I mean, that kind of sounds quite prescient in terms of the the business model, having boot camps, having, you know, PDFs, having kind of a script that people can follow. That's a lot of what, like, you know, it's similar to kind of what people like Andy Elliott are doing now. And I wonder to what extent those pickup artists, I mean, the Diary of a CEO guy might be an example, but people have been influential in shaping the way that subsequent kind of bro culture or business culture stuff is done, or is that just a coincidence that they were some of the earlier people using those kind of methods? Like, did they influence the way that people subsequent to them sold their services online, do you think, or not?
Before the pickup artist scene of the early 2000s, there were always sales boot camps and training boot camps that you could go to, and that's essentially what the pickup artist world adopted. Was you can think about something. You can think about the most obvious example is someone like Tony Robbins. He's not like necessarily giving you a really strict strategy, but like motivational seminars and stuff that you would go to, you know, have been around for many years, you know, but I typically think of them as teaching sales, but also, people would go to motivational speakers like Tony Robbins to hear a bunch of things that get you G'd up about your life. And then these pickup artist boot camps took that model and said, we're going to take this, instead of teaching people how to sell more cars, we're going to teach them how to pick up women, and we'll also get them into
Yeah.
a kind of high emotional state and probably sell them a bunch of more packages while they're at
Mm.
the boot camp. But it's funny. It was funny to me when you sent me that video of Mystery, because he's popped up occasionally on my timeline as well. And it was funny because you
Mm.
watched it and didn't really understand what you were watching, and you were just like, "What the fuck is this?" It's like this old dude who's like dressed like a kind of weird early 2000s reality show steampunk, and
Yeah, he's all
and
steamed.
and he's
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
talking about in
He
all this
wears these,
jargon.
sometimes wears these like, he sometimes wears these like steampunk goggles on his hat.
Yes.
Like that's one of his trademarks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
And I remember when the first time I saw him, so I read that article in Cosmo because I was at Claire's house. Claire is one of 4 girls, and so they just had Cosmo
Mhm.
at their house, and so I picked up this
Mhm.
edition of Cosmo, and
Mm.
I read it, and it was saying there's this guy called Neil Strauss who's written this book called The Game, and it's all about men
Mhm.
online who share tips about how to meet women. And I was like,
Mm.
man, I could use some tips on how to meet women. So I like rushed
Yeah.
to the computer. I had no idea that this existed in, this is 2005. I didn't know that there was anywhere you could go that would
Mm.
express to you how you could kiss a girl. And so I
Mm.
went I went on the internet, and then I never had the money to like spend on any of the products. And to be honest, the Australian scene was not the same as the one as the US, but people were traveling all over the
Right.
world to go to these boot camps. And so like people would
Wow.
go to Las Vegas to spend a week with Mystery and his trainers. And then Mystery and his trainers, to this day, it's like a smaller operation now, I think, but to this day, he still goes to other places. He'll fly to Bali. It looked like, for example, he was in Bali recently.
Yeah, he looked like he was in Bali when I saw him recently.
Yeah, and he'll bring a couple of his wingmen with him, who are his employees to help him with the camp. And then he'll say, "Look, if you can afford to get to Bali, fly to Bali." That they I'm sure they do packages where it's like, here's the package, you get the hotel, and then what we do is we go out, and this is like a really early, this is like an early 2000s pickup, mid 2000s pickup line, which was, they would call it sarging, which is when you go out to meet women. I don't remember why it was called that, but it was like, we're going to go out tonight and we're going to sarge. We're going to demonstrate high value, approach 2 sets in field. Obviously, it's a nightclub, so this is night game versus day game. So day game would be where you approach a woman at a farmer's market in a natural setting, as opposed to an environment like a nightclub where maybe people are there.
Stone cold sober. I mean, that's not a. Yeah, okay. Night game, day game.
Night game, day game. Day game, alcohol is typically not involved. Night game is more kind of boozy, dancey, those types of higher emotion environments like nightclubs. But it's interesting to me that Mystery is still doing the exact same thing that he was doing in 2005, because a lot of other people that were around at the same, like virtually everybody that was doing the same thing as him at that time, has grown into a 50-year-old man, or close to 50-year-old man now, maybe sort of early 40s, and they are doing other things. So there's the most famous one that I can think of that springs to mind, who was an early like pickup artist scene guy, but perhaps he wasn't necessarily, I think, doing exactly the same kind of like militant strategy as Mystery, was Mark Manson, who went on to write The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which is like the most airport book that you can ever, just everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's another guy called Jordan Harbinger, who's a huge podcaster now, who's interviewed Kobe Bryant, Malcolm Gladwell, and a few other people. He used to run a podcast called The Pickup Artist, or The Pickup Podcast, and then he opened one of his own, one of these like pickup artist training schools. So they have names like The Art of Charm or Real Social Dynamics was another famous one. And they were big on the internet, big on the forums, and
Real Social Dynamics just screams like multi-level marketing to me.
So the guy that started Real Social Dynamics, you're gonna love. There's a couple of guys who still kind of dress like Mystery. They've got their own style.
Yeah.
But they basically, I think a lot of them realized that one of the problems with the pickup artistry world, particularly as we got into the 2000s, is that it started to get a bit more media attention. It started to become a bit more sleazy, and it's also kind of limiting in that you can your target market can only be like these young men, and then you have to go out with them to nightclubs to train them. It sounds kind of exhausting. So what a couple of people from the Real Social Dynamics team did is they went on to just be like general motivational speakers and like self-actualization motivational speakers who you may have also come across on. So if you've got YouTube or Open There John, or maybe if you look up Owen Cook, Owen Cook, Owen Cook. This is another person that was also mentioned in the game who now does these motivational seminars that you can pay.
Owen Cook. Yeah, okay. Infield test. You won't believe the results.
So that's probably when he was still doing dating stuff, whereas he's switched now, I think, entirely to motivational stuff. Right. And the other thing is when you start doing the motivational stuff, it opens up your market to women. So a lot of these are, so you just double your market because like your total available market, because women are in there. And
I'm going to be watching this after the beef between Owen Cook and Mystery ? That's the Max Tomo podcast. So maybe there's trouble in paradise.
There was also a pickup
trouble in field.
Trouble in field in night game.
He's calling for reinforcements in field. Send
sarging during a night medics. Of sarging. And I think like a lot of things, it does have elements to it which can be quite beneficial, but then it's just that if you take it too far, you end up like Mystery. And I can't imagine back when I first saw Mystery, I just thought this is amazing because, you know, I sort of found myself somebody that struggled to meet and be confident with women. And he was just like, oh yeah, the reason that that's happening is because you don't know all these tricks. Or they would talk about is like some guys, a very small amount of guys. So the guy that you know that can get all the women, he's what they would call a natural. And he would be a person that was just imbued with the skills of meeting women, who never had to think about it. But they're basically saying like, that's not 99.9% of men. So we're going to teach you how you can do better than like 90% of the chumps at the bar, because they're just trying to get drunk and like get drunk confidence. Whereas if we teach you these little tricks about say this and then say that, and then physical escalation, which Mystery calls kino, like kinesthetics was another thing. So you'll hear him say, so what I did is I was with a 3-set and then I demonstrated higher value. And then when she laughed, I instantly went to kino. And then that's like him he'll say, I touched her back. I instantly went to kino. And at the time, I remember, I'm like, you watch. I'll find you some videos where he goes, I went to kino, then I went to comfort, then from comfort I escalated the kino a little bit, and then we went to make out for 3 hours. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I love when he says we went to make out. He goes, we went to make out for 2 or 3 hours on and off. It's like, you're a 53-year-old man. Why are you like making out with someone for 3 hours?
We escalated to make out in Belgrade on and off for 3 or 4 hours. Like
for 3 hours.
She probably just wanted somebody. She just needed somebody to pay her rent. Mystery. Like that's why. And
exactly.
I think at the time, I remember being quite conflicted, because I remember thinking, oh, well, this appears to be the only way to get women, is to learn all these tricks. And there was even if it wasn't the only way, it seemed like the most powerful way. Like you could walk into a bar and you could just pick. They sold it as you could kind of be the one guy who knows all the secrets and tactics, and you can go home with a beautiful woman. But at the same time, I remember just thinking, I can't memorize all this. Like, this is just exhausting and making me more anxious thinking. And also it makes you think, like, it made me think that if I say the wrong thing in a conversation with a woman, then there's no chance of her being interested in me because, oh, fuck, I demonstrated value incorrectly, or I went to kino too quickly. Oh no. Whereas in reality, if you just have like a normal interaction with a person and you just sort of trust your subconscious to be able to talk to a person like me and you are doing right now, then
Yeah.
that's a much more pleasant and actually less weird and creepy way of. But
Exactly.
the balance is that
and right now, like if I was there, I'd probably go to Kino.
You would go to
I'd
Kino.
say we're having a great chat. Give you a pat on the shoulder.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I count as a set. I forget what they call a single person, but yeah, once there was a one set, and I walked over to my one set podcast pastor, and then a podcast partner, and then I went to Kino and escalated, demonstrated higher value. But the thing, I think the thing that can be helpful is just some of the basic stuffs about it that are like, I think. Because I didn't even know in like 2003, 2004, I didn't even really realize like the way that because like let's say that you meet a woman and you like her and you would like it to be romantic. Well, the first thing that kind of needs to happen really for it to the first thing that's going to be obvious to you and the other person that it's entered into a romantic space is if you're basically kissing each other or something like that. So I think a lot of the question is just like, how do you get to kiss a woman? And I think that the thing that I didn't really realize that I think it helped with is it kind of explained, well, typically the way that happens is that you start interacting with a person. And then again, what they call Kino is, again, this was back when I was drinking more. And I think the vast majority of people who get together probably still to this day, alcohol is involved.
Alcohol's involved.
And it's generally the progression is that you start sort of flirting you're together with somebody, and then you're sort of flirting, you're like back and forth and giggling, and somebody is smiling. This is them. What do they call this? Like showing interest or whatever. And then you sort of read each other's signs, and again, alcohol would always help with this. You'd sort of find yourself in closer proximity to the woman, like at a house party or a date. You're sitting next to each other, or you're on a couch together. Suddenly, you're sort of leaning into each other, and you're breaking down that physical barrier that you have with a stranger or a person who you're not intimate with. And then eventually, you're sort of staring into each other's eyes. And then you just sort of get this feeling like this person, I want to kiss this person. I'm thinking about it. And then you sort of lean in, and that's like how it happens, right?
Then you go to make out.
Then you go to make out in Belgrade on and off for 2 to 3 hours. And then,
I
if
used
you get
to
sick, and then
struggle with that final step. So you would mock me because I would do something that you called the permission slip.
That's right.
Where I would just
demonstrating lower value.
I was demonstrating lower value.
You did the very woke. You did the woke thing.
I did before it was
before it was being written about as what you had to do on a date. Tell everybody what you would do.
I just did it. I did it partly because I just kind of thought it's just an easier way to manage that. Like, is this the right moment thing?
Yeah.
Where I would get to the point where I thought, I feel like this is the right moment. And then I would just say to someone, can I kiss you?
Yeah.
And, I don't think anyone said no, because I usually was like, I wasn't just walking up to people and saying that. I was pretty confident that the answer would be
We would
yes.
say, John, you were pretty well calibrated, which means that.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
So calibrated means that you're reading the signals correctly. I'm definitely giving myself away as to how into this I was. I was just going to go, I think I heard about that, John. I think I heard about that community.
Yeah, exactly. Just like trying to put your hand over your bookshelf in the background.
I've got my furry hat gift that I got from a mystery boot camp. This because I wore this. I wore this. Do you know what they call? Again, another thing that kind of entered the popular lexicon. I'm not really sure if mystery and the PUA community came up with it. Do you know what it's called, John, when you wear flashy clothing to attract the attention of women?
No, peacocking.
There you
Is
go,
that what
peacocking.
That's there you go.
That's why mystery. This is this claim. That's why he dresses like that, so that women would come up to him in the nightclub and be like, "Wow, that's a crazy furry hat that you've got on." And then that became quite widely mocked. The giant furry top hat that, like, if you wanted to do a skit where you were pretending to be mystery or any pickup artist, the item you wear is a big furry top hat. But yeah, tell everyone about the permission.
Like a kind of Jamiroquai.
It's exactly a Jamiroquai hat.
Yeah.
Tell everyone. So and the other, and the goggles is so that women would come up to him and be like, "Oh my god, I love your goggles," or "Why are you wearing those stupid goggles?" And then he would flip it around and give him a neg right back.
Yeah. You don't even know about steampunk. Fuck off. Yeah, when he tells this story, he says when he saw a two-set on entry, and they approached him while he was with some other woman.
I was with a 7 establishing a jealousy plot line when I entered Dosage for night game, and then I DHV'd, demonstrate higher value, and then negged a 3-set to my left. And then I merged sets. Merging sets is where you like take a 3-set and a 2-set and you go, guys, don't you know each other? Merging sets.
Wow,
mate,
merging
back
sets.
in the day, John, you should have seen.
I love it.
John, you should have seen me merge sets back in the day. They called me Michael Merger.
And then he says, Michael Merger. There he is.
They called me.
Old merger lot.
They said that I was in charge of M&A, mergers and acquisitions, because I would merge sets and acquire women.
And then he says this woman selected him, one of the 2 sets.
Yeah.
And he said something which was obviously a DHV, where he said something like, "You're going to have to fight for me, it'll be worth it." That's
right. Absolutely a DHV. Yeah. And it's funny, I did a bunch of that stuff. Like I did a bit of that stuff for a while. Like I found, I've said this to you before, I found some like old messages that I sent people in like 2007, 2008, and they are so cringy, and they are all that kind of like, "Oh, you're just trying to get with me." And I can't read them now. They're they just don't fit my personality at all.
Yeah.
But at the time,
I mean, it's training wheels, isn't it, this stuff? And then you realize you don't need it after a certain time, except if you're mystery, then you just keep plugging away.
Well, I think
and then he's 53
kind of like,
with a...
It's sort of sad. I would have assumed that like a lot of these other people that he just would have transitioned into he'd go, "Oh yeah, that's cool. Like the tactics can help if you need tactics, but I just interact normally with people now, and I don't talk I don't go out thinking about interacting with women like a military assault that needs all of these strategies and jargon and acronyms, and it's just exhausting, and you just end up not feeling like yourself. You feel like this like fake person because you're." Because of course the other thing they give you as in part of the kind of mystery method world was these canned lines, and so they've also been quite widely mocked because it got to the point where you'd go out in London in 2008, and if you were a woman, like a bunch of quite awkward men were suddenly asking you the same questions every time. Like you'd just be ordering a drink, and suddenly a sort of pallid, bald man with a squeaky little voice would approach you, sweating, and he would just be terrified, and he would just say, "Will you guys help me settle a bet?" Which was like the classic, which was you go up to a group of women and you say, "Would you guys help us settle a bet?" And then you just go, "Chocolate or vanilla ice cream," and then that's your opener.
Yeah.
And then after the opener, then you need to transition into DHV. It's demonstrating high value. Pick your target, bit of Keno, go to comfort.
Yeah.
And
go to comfort. What does that mean?
Comfort.
What's that step?
Comfort was like, so the idea is that the natural progression of seduction is this idea that there's a kind of, the first thing is that a woman is going to go, she's going to decide whether or not you are of higher value, if you're a high value man.
Yeah.
So if you're like confident and you pass her shit tests, so she says, "Well, you go and get me a drink." And you're like, "I'm not getting a drink for a bitch like you." And then and she goes, "This guy's cool because he's not like doing what because I'm a pretty woman and most men just do whatever the fuck I tell them." Exactly. And then, so she's interested, so she might start twirling her hair with her finger. But then you typically can't progress to make out, or certainly not to sex, unless she trusts. You got to establish comfort and trust after that.
Yeah, okay.
So you kind of got to go
Yeah.
from this high emotional point of like, you know, oh, she's excited, we're having fun. Then you got to go to, oh, you know, my mother died in a car accident when I was 3 years old, and I really love Shawshank Redemption.
I see.
I love Shawshank
Yeah.
Redemption, and
Yeah.
sometimes I listen to Ed Sheeran and the A Team by Ed Sheeran, and I cry because, you know, and I don't tell anyone that because I'm on the outside I'm really tough, but I got a real soft side. And then she's supposed to go, wow, this is a sensitive new age guy, a real snag. You'd say and then she'd turn to her friends and say, if it was 2006, she'd go, I love this guy because he's a snag and he's a metrosexual. Because I would have like, I would have the Beckham soft, I'd have a Beckham soft mohawk. I'd have beads on and goggles and a furry hat. But yeah,
I can just hear my little daughter going past, and I'm thinking, there you go. All those years ago, I got the permission slip.
there you go. So yeah, so we interrupted you. So the permission slip was that you would say to you would be drunk with woman, and then you'd feel like the vibe was on.
Off my guts.
You were sitting next to her, and you go, and you would say, "Can I kiss you?"
Yeah, I guess we would. Sometimes that wasn't necessary because you just, you know, you'd find your moment and off you'd go. But if there was a bit of kind of, also if I was just kind of, because that's where I used to get stuck, is that kind of will they, won't they? We're just talking, we're getting along, but I don't know how to kind of break that glass of just like,
it's a massive
I want this
risk.
to be.
It's a massive risk.
It's a
and your
huge
brain
leap.
is going, fuck, if she doesn't want to kiss me and I try, that's the fate worse than death.
Exactly.
If I go in for the kiss and she pulls back and goes like, oh,
yeah,
no,
that's what I was
that's
worried
not
about.
what this was at all. You thought I was interested in you? That's disgusting. You're a piece of trash.
And then all their friends would come out from behind the wall and point at you and laugh and say, you thought you were going to have sex with her? And you'd say, but I don't know where I went wrong. I tried. I got kinesthetic.
You did Kino. You went from
Kino.
DHV to Kino.
I just asked Sint to come in because I could hear her crying.
Yes.
And I thought, this is what happens if you get it. If you get the initial makeout and 7 years later.
Yes. Oh wow, she's got her eyes open and everything. Oh man, it's amazing. She looked. Oh, too cute. That's too cute, John.
Okay. That's okay.
Hi, Jacinta.
Exactly. Everything the light touches. So there they go.
That was great.
My favorite.
Wow, she's looking.
My favorite 2 cents.
and then you've got all your degrees at the back of you to demonstrate to DHV every day. You point at your degrees and demonstrate higher value.
Every time Sint comes in, I'm just like, what do you think of those?
Rub her back. Just go, skin you a bit of Kino, love. Bit of Kino on my one set.
Yes.
You love that,
You're
don't
my
you?
favorite one set.
You love that. Sorry that I negged you too much last night. That ended in a fight.
I'd love if you were kind of in a long-term relationship and you kept deploying the mystery tactics, like even when you just come home from work and your partner's on the couch and you're like, your hair looks nice if you like that sort of hair.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, can we just stop this?
But yeah, it's been hugely influential. And yeah, as I say, I think some of the basics can be quite helpful because you sort of understand, there is like a certain amount of mechanics behind this. Because if you're totally clueless, I think that's the thing that kind of did explain to me was at least, okay, the way that you kiss somebody is there are like a set of it's kind of naturally for like the vast majority of humanity, people just sort of naturally work this out, or they just got hammered. That's what people in our societies did. Either what you did is you had an arranged marriage and you didn't have to worry about any of this shit, or if you didn't have a culture that had arranged marriage, you typically had access to alcohol and you would just get hammered, and then people just kind of fall into each other at parties or at work, and that was it.
Exactly. And they thought, oh, well, I'm in this now. May as well stick to it. I mean, internet dating has kind of been a huge game changer, obviously, because it was for me, because you at least met with somebody on the basis that they were interested in dating and they'd agreed to go on a date with you. So you can make certain starting assumptions that you can't if you're in field, and you've just got to... you're just sarging in field.
Fucking hell, you are making me want to sarge in field so hard right now. I might go out in Berlin and sarge in field. I think
solo sarge.
I think the point that I was trying to get to was, I think the place you want to get to, which is what. So those courses they sold, of the courses and the boot camps of the 2000s, they sold this idea that you didn't have to work on your life at all. There was a set of tricks that you could do. So if you lived in your parents' basement and smoked weed all day and were kind of like quite an undesirable man, maybe didn't even have great fucking hygiene or whatever, that so long as you learn the tricks and you use the canned lines that they gave you, that you could basically sleep with any beautiful woman, and that you sort of deserved to as well, so long as you paid for the course or whatever. Instead of a more holistic approach, which is obviously much more difficult to sell, which is... if you work on yourself and you become like a person with a cool life that people want to be around, because you take care of other people and you are responsible and you are reliable and you sometimes sacrifice yourself for others. You're just like a cool man, duty, honor, sacrifice, dignity, honor.
Yeah.
Just a cool man out there, and then you are just confident in your own skin. Then you're gonna, like, not only is a woman gonna be interested in you, but they're gonna be interested in you for the long term, and it's obviously gonna be more of like they're gonna be interested in you as a real person as opposed to these tricks. So
mind trick that you did on them.
Yeah, instead of like you don't have to just constantly be negging sets and keynoing.
Reminds me of the Wedding Singer at the end, where Will Ferrell is just living with his mum and picking up people at funerals. It's that kind of that's right. Where you don't want to end up.
Is that are you thinking of or you're
the Wedding Crashers?
You're thinking of the Wedding Crashers, yeah. It's absolutely that. Yeah. That's a very good analogy. Like, kind of mystery feels a bit like Will Ferrell in... Because look, I'm not denying that he can still get like 19-year-old Serbian girls in nightclubs. That fine, good luck to him. But it's just so exhausting to think that at 53 that he's like, like, just can't you just sort of relax, have a bunch of interests, just talk about your fucking interests, just be like, you know what. This is what's going on in my life, and if you want to be around that, that's cool. And I've had a cool, interesting life. I'm a cool, interesting guy, and I'm just going to talk about myself. And you know what? I've got interesting opinions on things that I haven't just structured in a text file at home, because they'll elicit the kind of Pavlovian response in you that I think they will.
Exactly right. I mean, imagine if you got picked up by him and then you went home and the next day you're saying, what are you about? What are you into? And it turned out that what just happened is basically his whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, he picks people up and he teaches people how to pick people up, and you would feel like such a fucking dupe because you like fell for this kind of, script.
Yeah.
Unless you were like, I'm also into steampunk and pickup art. I mean, maybe there's women out there who would be his match in that regard.
My thing is steampunk and being a target of pickup artists that's what I'm passionate about. Exactly. But I guess it's the same as it's the same as a woman going home with what would be a classic, although a classic womanizer would be someone who's seen as being a bit more suave and natural. You could argue they're essentially doing the same thing. Like, they're kind of doing they're doing their tricks to bed somebody and then kick him out of bed in the morning or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes people are obviously, they know that's what that is and they're fine with it.
Yeah.
But But all of this is to say, guys, if you want to get in on the next DPTM
Boot camp.
Love Boot Camp, it's happening in Denpasar in January 2026. Hello at dptm.org.
There's the other thing we should probably touch on is what the current evolution of this is, which they don't really call pickup anymore. I'm not really. I guess they call it online. What do they call it now? But we've probably touched on this. Instagram and TikTok are filled with videos of young men doing infield day game videos with what I think are like Ray-Ban's meta glasses. So I've heard one guy call them the Riz guys with the meta glasses. And so they approach women on the street with wearing these sunglasses that have a camera in them, and the women don't know that the camera is there. And then they say, "Hey, you look really beautiful today. Just wanted to give you a compliment. Hey, beautiful women like you are so hard to come by. I'm a cool, confident guy. Do you want to give me your number?" And then they give the guy the number. If you see the video, typically they've given the guy the number or done what he wants them to do. And then he posts the video to Instagram or YouTube, I think almost always without their permission. And then there's always a link in his bio to a boot camp or a PDF or online. Like nowadays, of course, a lot of it would be coaching through video calls.
Right.
And there's been a lot of talk and discussion about this about privacy and things like this, because there's been a few women that have popped up in the comments and gone, "This is me. I just gave you my number because like you were I felt uncomfortable and I just wanted to get rid of you, and I also don't want this on the fucking internet. Like fuck you." So because suddenly this woman who's just gone to work is just like, "Hey, how you doing? Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Oh, well, you should be, you're so beautiful. Give me a number." And she's like, yeah, all right, bye. And then there's like that video is just getting served to all of her colleagues at the office that morning, and maybe a boyfriend's seen it. When her intention was just like get rid of him and like never answer or block the thing or
probably
whatever.
Gave him a fucking.
And then he probably said,
"Well,
you shouldn't have given him, if you don't want me, you shouldn't give me a fucking number then." Stupid bitch. You stupid bitch, don't give me a number if you think, you deserve to be on the internet for that. That's what all the comments would be. Absolutely. Those would be the comments.
It's a wonderful world.
So like it's still huge because of, it's the eternal problem of men struggling to meet women. And I say to everybody, don't, the boot camps these days are much less. Like there is some strategy, definitely, but a lot of it is just about, it's more, I guess, they promote a more kind of natural, just go and talk to people style. There are a few little tips and tricks, but it's nothing like the mystery method of...
reminds me, it's very much like this kind of neurolinguistic programming.
The neurolinguistic program was massive in the pickup artist industry. That's the first time I ever heard of it. Was because they were all using it, and because the guy who predates all of them. So before there was like an internet, and before there was an internet pickup artist scene, I think in the 80s and even 90s, there was a guy called. You should probably look this up now. Or I think he's still alive. There was a guy called Ross Jeffries who took NLP techniques, which Neurolinguistic program, which is this kind of like offshoot of hypnosis and psychology. And Ross Jeffries was running like workshops when he was doing like ads on like phone boxes and stuff before the internet. So he's kind of seen as the one of, if not the originator of this, like teaching men skills to meet women. And if you've seen, go on, John.
Neil Strauss describes him as the godfather of modern pickup artist community, and also Tom Cruise's character Frank T. Mackey in the film Magnolia was inspired by Jeffries, according to Paul Thomas Anderson. There you go.
And that's the worship the cock, tame the cunt guy, if you remember that from Magnolias. And what's he doing? He's holding one of these sort of motivational workshops on a stage. Is Tom Cruise's character.
Yeah. And then he ends up being kind of, I don't know, I haven't seen that movie in ages, but ends up being a kind of sad, empty person.
Yeah.
But
unlike Eric von Mark, Eric von Mistry,
Yeah, exactly.
who
He's happy as a
he
clam.
also is smoking a ton of cigarettes, which I love. Just adds to the whole kind of thing around him. He's just like 54 and just chain smoking cigarettes in a steampunk outfit in Bali, just like with men around him, and he's just talking about demonstrating higher value and saying, "Has anyone got a cig?"
Give me a cig and we'll go to make out.
Well, that sounds like a pretty good episode from John.
Yeah,
John has to go and art.
I didn't think we'd spend a whole deep dive on that, but it's been great. It's been fascinating. And I'm going to go back out to my Tusat and
you need to and then you can do the ask the permission slip from Jacinta.
from Jacinta.
Can I kiss you?
Can I kiss you?
Can I go to make out? Have I demonstrated enough? I have a podcast that's over 200 episodes. Have I demonstrated enough high value?
Exactly.
Maybe.
And she'd say, "Can you just settle the baby? I'm going to bed."
I was going to
say, "I'll take it. It's our bed." So
I was going to say, I was going to say do this next week, but we might forget to do it. So I'm just going to do it now. I'm just going to ask Rock, which is X's large language model. I'm just going to say, can you give me 20 of the 20 pieces, and then I'll just pick some of them. Pieces of early 2000s pick up artist jargon. Okay, so let's have a look here. So we'll see if I find some that it didn't. Okay, great, man. This is bringing back some memories. So you have AFC. So that's the average frustrated chump. So that's what you start as. You start as an AFC, and you're like, oh man, I'm such an AFC. And then you'd love to go to AMOG, which is alpha male of group. That whole alpha male thing is from the pickup artist world as well. So when you see like Tate and all that alpha male stuff is from the pickup artist world of the early 2000s. Approach anxiety is the fear of starting a conversation with a stranger. Bitch shield, a woman's defensive attitude towards unwanted advances. Canned material is the pre-scripted lines that you say and make them seem natural. Cock block is another one that's just more popular in culture. Someone, friend or rival of the woman who interrupts a pickup attempt. DHV. Then DLV, John, is demonstration of lower value, accidentally revealing neediness or weakness, tanking your game. That's the other thing is we never even said this is kind of called, do you have game? Do you not have game? You know, the modern interpretation, the modern word is Riz. Okay. Infield, Keno, Neg. Number close is when you ask you go, oh, I went up to this girl, DHV'd, tiny bit of Keno, and then number close, which means you got her phone number. Peacocking and wing or wingman. So yeah, you would say, man, oh man, I feel like such an AFC tonight. I got such approach anxiety. You know, I got all this canned material, but when I walked to the nightclub, I was DLVing hard. And I think I'd love to chat to that woman, but she looks like she's got a real bitch shield up. And I think I'll go on Negger and maybe, I've got a few wingmen with me tonight, and I'm peacocking with my steampunk goggles, and I reckon with
massage buddies.
With massage buddies, I'd love to number close that HB, hot babe. It's really important that I control the frame. Around the conversation tonight, and I should be in for a very relaxing evening with friends here.
of establishing the kind of connection that's going to lead to a long and meaningful relationship. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I would love it if he just talked about it, and then all the, instead of going to make out, just go to something sweet. Go to hand holding and sending love letters.
I went to love letters. I DHV and Keno, and then I did the love letter close where I had a canned love letter in the shape of a love heart that I just handed her and sprayed it with my cologne and glitter.
Can I get your address? I don't want your phone number. I just want to send you a letter with hearts for O's.
Well, yeah, you have to get off to your 2 set.
Yeah. I got some Keno to do.
to make another one of those little babies.
That's right. Exactly.
It's quite a good topic. We can maybe return to this.
Tried to just go to make out, and I ended up going to having a daughter.
There needs to be the ultimate acronym. That's the final boss of this whole thing. We need to come up with an acronym for like having a child. Like, you know, carry. I went, I DHV'd, keynote, went to make out. Even after make out, number close, and then
number close.
And then I got a date, and then she went to full term.
CC, which is child close.
Child close. Or WFT went full term. Went to full term. She carried CFT carry full term. Carried to full term. Cool.
Beautiful.
Thanks, man. Do you want to send us out?
I want to say thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of Don't Praise the Machine. If you want to enjoy next week's episode a little bit early, or you want to open yourself up to a host of other benefits, please check us out on Don't Praise the Machine Patreon on Google. Otherwise, we will see you at the regular time next week, and we can't wait to see you next week
at the podcast.